And how did I ended up doing this, starting 30 years? I got diagnosed with cancer at the tender age of 26. I had a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which till today nobody knows where it came from, but it was there. I had to go through 2 surgeries, a complete stage of chemotherapy, and I ended up leaving the hospital after 6 months of treatments, losing about 85 pounds. And I was obviously not the same person than before. And the thing which bothered me is when classical medicine let you go because they finalized the treatment, you are more or less left alone with what you are doing, or how you're going to organize your life, and how eventually you prevent yourself from not getting attacked by another illness again, or that the cancer will not come back. All these kinds of thoughts, they went through my brain, and obviously there are 2 pathways you can go. You either neglect it and you put it aside and said, okay, I had it, let's put it aside and let's move on with life. And there's the other pathway which I took. I was eager to get more information about what happened to me, about the disease, about how it affected me, about what I could potentially do to protect myself, beside of all the classical medical treatments and regimens which they did to me anyway. And so I took that pathway and I start collecting information about the disease I was suffering from. And over the course of time, I understood a little bit that our body has tremendous self-healing capacities, but you need to somehow establish a certain standard in your organism so that your body is able to take the fight. Strong immune system, high energy. I needed at that time, I need to get rid of the toxins caused by the chemotherapy, because they do a lot of damage to you when you don't get rid of them. Those are the so-called collateral damages or side effects, and so I ended up in energy medicine, because at that time anti-Google was not in our world, so you had to show even efforts to get information, go to lectures, go to libraries, read books, all the things the young people don't do anymore, because everything is in Google, and nowadays even in AI. So we don't even have to use our brain anymore. There are companies who will do that for us in the nearest future. Isn't that amazing? Exactly, yeah. But that's what's going to happen right now, so we have to be aware of that. But when it comes to PEMF, so to close the story, I got introduced to a technology which is called pulse electromagnetic field therapy, which is nothing else than creating electromagnetic fields expose these fields to your body, and there should be some good effects going on when you experience such a treatment. A guy did a lecture at that time, and he introduced the technology. By the way, this was for the first time where the first units appear for home use, so people could buy it and use it in the comfort of their home, versus going to clinics or doctor's offices and using it. And my problem was I also suffered from insomnia due to the high toxins. So not a really nice combination, having cancer, 2 surgeries, a complete stage of chemotherapy, and then trying to recover, but in the same time getting insomnia, so your body cannot recover when you cannot sleep. So my first goal was to get rid of that insomnia. And the guy introducing this technology said to me that this technology was mainly targeted for people suffering from sleep problems. And at that time, the PEMF device was even called the sleeping machine. And the people who use this technology already, who is using one of our systems already? Just raise your hands. Yeah, you see? So the people who don't use, they have a lot of people to talk to today and getting some feedback, which is quite good. But you guys probably also figured out that when you start using this, a lot of people, they even fall asleep during a treatment because it really relaxes you and makes you fall asleep. And the reason is because you are on the sleeping machine. So if you suffer from sleeping problems, this is probably the best you can do for yourself, to use a PEMF machine, because it will put you to sleep like a lullaby. Every day it will improve your sleep, and further on, if you can sleep very well, your body can recover better, so it will rebuild your strength for self-healing just by doing this. And I bought one of the machines at that time, I used it, and after 6 weeks I started sleeping like a baby. I did not do anything else, I was not on medication at that time anymore. And bottom line, I was so intrigued, I was so excited about my personal experience that I decided to make a business out of that. You know, I tell you this, sometimes people very chronically ill, they start using our equipment and they become worse the first 2-3 weeks. If you already below the carpet with your spirit, and then you got introduced to something which is a kind of an investment, and you start using it and it gets worse, it doesn't make you happy, right? But you have to understand that holistic healing. So holistic means whenever you talk to the whole body, and you don't look for a specific targeted treatment, like a painkiller for your headache, or a specific medication for your diabetes. You know, energy medicine always looks at the whole picture, at your organism as a whole. And sometimes it happens even that the cause of your problem is completely somewhere else in your body. It shows up like as a symptom somewhere, but the cause is completely somewhere else. And holistic medicine, energy medicine, is always capable of uncovering that. And those are the so-called healing reactions. In specific language, we call it Herxheimer effect. So if something is really chronic and you address it correctly, profoundly, and efficiently, then it usually gets worse before it gets better. And it makes total sense, because remember, if you get a disease, usually when it starts, it's always acute. So the flu, for example, you know, the first 2 days when you have a flu, bedtime, because it's really acute. And if you treat it correctly, then it goes away. If you don't treat it correctly, it goes away, but not 100%. There is always a certain percentage of symptoms which are flaring up from time to time. And this is what we know as chronic. We have about 80% of all people on our planet suffering from a disease are in a chronic condition, which is very good for business. Because the pharmaceutical companies, they cannot deal with two target groups: dead people and healthy people. You know, there is nothing to gain. So that's why the invention of side effects makes sense. So this chronic problem which we face, you know, this is the real problem in healthcare. Because those people, they cost a lot of money. You can easily become 100 years old and be ill for 50 years, 60 years. But that's not the goal. You know, if you have a holistic approach, the goal is always to find the cause and to treat the cause, because once the cause is treated, you are a healthy person again. You know, and of course, health is not defined by the absence of illness, because health has so many faces. You know, we have people, they are very healthy, they don't do a sport, they don't do a 5K four times per week, but they are still healthy people. So health is a term which has many, probably millions of faces. So at the end, what is PEMF? I could stop my lecture because I already gave you the answer from AI, and there was more or less, there was nothing wrong what's in there, because it says PEMF is something out of electromagnetism, where you need electricity. This electricity creates a magnetic field. This field has a certain properties, and these certain properties, they create some effects in your body. That's what PEMF is. And but it is still a little bit more when we look into the details. And those details are important for you if you shop the internet for a PEMF device, for example. You want to compare. You want to compare our system with another system. So how are you going to compare? How are you going to compare a Swiss Bionic device with a device of the probably 150 competitors which are already market their devices online? Usually it's difficult. The easiest is always the price. But the price doesn't give you an idea about the value. Because when you buy something, it's not about the price, it's about the value. Because such a system is in 99% bought by people who want to solve a problem. But the waveform is crucial. So, coming back to PEMF, you know, waveform is crucial. If you shop for a PEMF device, ask for the waveforms. If manufacturers don't tell you this because it's personal property, don't even touch them, because they don't know what they are talking about. There is no mystery here. Everybody who manufactures a PEMF system and is a reliable, honest manufacturer will share this information with you. Because at the end it's physics, you know? And I see so many waveforms. I always call them GMO waveforms, genetically modified waveforms. A lot of companies, they invent new waveforms, but those waveforms do not exist in physics. You know, if you Google sine wave, square wave, sawtooth, you will find them in physics. They are there. Sawtooth is used in sound, in music. I mean, those waveforms are Newton's physics. So, how do we create a waveform out of a signal? That's just a little animation, you know, that tells you a little bit. When you have a signal generator, when you have a frequency generator built in your device, you know, usually what this device is capable of doing is it creates out of a very simple waveform, by changing its properties. It creates something really complex, with engineering, with software, with hardware, with computing, and so on and so on. And this is just a simple animation which shows you how you can create a sawtooth out of a sine wave. So you can only do this if you have a built-in frequency generator. And I tell you, 90% of all PEMF devices, they have not built in a frequency generator. So they literally take the electricity from the wall and apply it through the applicator directly to your body. Dirty electricity, you know, and you will not figure it out, because it's very low intensity, so you will not feel it, but your body will feel it, you know. We also call this electrosmog. Maybe you heard about that, you know. So you can sit on your computer for 2 hours, you will not get rid of your lower back pain. Even if this device also creates an electromagnetic field, but because the content of the information is not designed to create any health beneficial effects, because it probably has not such a sophisticated controlled waveform, it doesn't have the right frequency, it doesn't have the right intensity, and therefore it's not designed to make you feel better. Does it make sense? Good. And this is what you have to take home today. If we talk about healing, I don't like this word so much because you're always in the somehow in a field which you don't want to be. But at the end, healing is nobody can heal us. Only our body can heal. You know, and this is how I experience or how I gonna interpret healing. It's the capacity of your own body to help itself. That's for me. That's the term healing. So, like I said, the content of the field is crucial, and you are always allowed to ask questions about frequency, intensity, waveform, and also about some hardware things, which I will come up in a minute. But the next thing is intensity. So how we gonna apply this electromagnetic field? So in order to transfer the information, we need a force to do that. And this force needs to go through something in order to be created. And we, for example, we use copper coils. So when you use one of our whole body mats and you lie on it, you have no magnets built in. There are actually copper coils, solid, uninsulated copper coils with a certain amount of windings and a certain amount of diameter of the wire. And this is how they look like, more or less, right? Why? Because with this kind of concept, you can transfer the electromagnetic energy from the control unit via the applicator to your body. And we call this induction. It's a physical phenomenon. Induction is the transfer of energy. And so while using one of these copper coils and running electricity through it, we create, when it starts pulsing, so when the frequency is hacked by the electricity, then we create a pulsing electromagnetic field with a certain force capable of being transferred into your body. And this induction rate is another crucial parameter of how efficient a PEMF device is when you use it, because it determines with which force the information is introduced to your cellular structure, to your organism. Understood? Yeah. Good. And believe it or not, there are a lot of concepts in the market. For example, on top, this is the regular coil which you find, I would say, in 80% of all devices. It's not even a solid copper coil. It's just a mesh wire. Some are even so cheap they are still insulated. So the induction rate of these devices is, I would not say zero, but it is not even enough to transfer the valuable information to your body. Does it make sense? Good. So in order to do that in a good way, you have to use solid copper coils with a certain diameter, with a very, very precise winding. Even with a very precise amount of winding, because with the amount of windings you can calculate the force, the inductive force, how the energy is transported into your body. And of course, this is much more expensive because solid copper, you know, copper became very expensive. Now even more with the tariffs. So this is it's called the orange gold already, because it has very good inductive properties. So there is almost no resistance when you run electricity through copper. So that gives you a very good property to transfer energy via induction. And this is the the gold standard when you use a PEMF device, it should be equipped with solid copper coils. You know, and most of the devices, they don't have this. And most of the manufacturers, they don't even disclose their properties, which is not good. So, and then we have another phenomenon, which we call resonance. Resonance is quite simple. Ich spreche jetzt mal Deutsch. He answers in Spanish. I was speaking German. Resonance is the capability of digesting information and start dealing with it. Let's say it like that. Right? So wenn ich jetzt Deutsch spreche, or if you speak some kind of Asian language, most of the people need to check out and say, hey, sorry, I don't understand. You know, I don't understand also means I cannot resonate with it. Because if you cannot understand an information, you cannot digest it and you cannot process it, and you cannot take something out of that. Right? So in order to benefit from energy, any applied energy, no matter what it is, you have to make sure that you resonate with it. Because resonance means I understand it, I can take it over, this information, and I can create something out of that. So this is a very, by far the most important property of applying energy medicine is the phenomenon of resonance, is the phenomenon of understanding information, taking it over, and start creating an effect out of this. And there are quite some terrific scientific studies. One which was done even 45, 50 years ago, Ade and Bowen, they figured out that if you expose human cells, I think they did it at that time with brain cells, so they isolated brain cells in an in vitro environment, so in the laboratory, and they exposed those brain cells with certain frequencies. And they figured out that within a very, very narrow window of frequencies, the brain cells, they showed a very good response to it in terms of dividing itself, creating more cells out of that. And this study is very well known till today as the so-called study about biological window of frequencies. And interestingly, those frequencies were more or less between 0.5 and 30 hertz. So within that very, very low frequency range, it seems like that our body is resonating quite well. So if you think what kind of frequencies you should apply when you utilize PEMF, well, if you are within that biological window, it could not be wrong, because you create resonance. And that's why it's so important that PEMF devices need to good PEMF devices with a holistic approach. So in the meaning of you have a whole body applicator and you apply it to the whole body. In order to create the highest resonance effect, you have to make sure that you stay with the frequencies within the biological window. And of course, good systems do that, and not so good systems, they don't do that. And now imagine you are exposed to a device which is emitting certain frequencies, and frequencies which are within a certain frequency range your body understands, resonance. You got a lot of these frequencies based on the waveform. So remember, a triple sawtooth transports much more single frequencies comparing to a sine wave. So, and then you also do this within an intensity spectrum, which is the highest, lowest intensity, which still creates an effect. Out of that, we create something which is called resonance. And what happens to these metronomes is nothing else than what happens to your body when you are exposed to a PEMF device. because your cells will, over time, resonate with the applied frequencies and will therefore benefit from this effect in terms of getting all the imbalances out and also creating even chemical effects within the cellular structure for better function. I will show this towards the end. We are almost at the end, but what you need to understand it that these frequencies which we apply, the best way to apply them and the best approach to apply them and the best way to learn which one will work, well, let's have a look into nature. Because we have natural frequencies. We are surrounded since millions of years. For example, maybe you heard about the Schumann frequencies. The Schumann frequencies, it's the carrier frequency of the ionosphere. This is nothing hoax, this is physics. And this is, this is science. And this is proven. You know, that there is a single frequency within our ionosphere. Ionosphere is the space between the surface of the Earth and the exit to the stratosphere. This is the space where only the astronauts can move because there is no oxygen anymore, there is no gravity anymore, and there is no electromagnetic field of the Earth anymore. So that's an environment which we cannot function anymore because we don't have the properties to do that. You know, and this Schumann resonance, it's, by the way, it is created by the spherics, by the weather, by the lightning strikes. And the cool thing about the Schumann frequency, it's very stable. 7.83 hertz. Isn't that amazing? That we live in an environment where very, very precise information is constantly apparent without fluctuation, or without, or let's say with only tiny fluctuations. You know, that makes our entire space, our entire cosmos livable. Because all these properties, they align with each other. These frequencies, for example, the Earth magnetic field. The Earth magnetic field is meanwhile perfectly scientifically proven, even in terms of its frequencies. 11.75 to 11.79 hertz is the carrier frequency of the Earth magnetic field. Very tiny and very stable, you know. And if you look at 11.7 hertz, if you look at 7.83 hertz, and now you look, for example, in our brainwaves, the prevailing frequencies in our brains are between 0.5 and 25 hertz, which miraculously is exactly within that biological window with which Adey and Baldwin already confirmed in their scientific study in the 70s, that they react very good on the brain cells react very good on these frequencies. So there is a correlation between our health and the information surrounded by us. And if this information is not good anymore, and if this information goes in a different intensity level, goes in a different frequency level, which we cannot process anymore, then two things happen. We either can still neglect them, but if they are becoming too prevailing, we cannot neglect them anymore, and then we start suffering from them. Electrosmog, for example. Even, did it ever happen to you? You go in a room and you feel not comfortable right away. And do you know why? Because the frequencies in that room, they do not resonate with you. Huh? Even worse, you go on a date, and then you meet this person, and I need to get out of here. Right? Huh? Well, I can tell you briefly from the science of energy medicine, your frequency does not resonate with his or her frequency. That's the result. So, yes, you need to get out of here because it's not going to work. Right? Or sometimes people are so resistant that they say, I'm going to make this frequency shift. Good luck. That's a challenge, right? Sometimes it even works, which almost always ends up in the best relationships. You know, if you fight for a frequency change, you know, it's a workload, but sometimes it pays off, and then it's often sustainable. But what I told you right now, the principle of love and hate is based on frequency. It's very simple. And it sounds abstract, but it is exactly like that. Because if you cannot resonate with something or somebody, then the content of the information you are exposed to is just not working for you. And so you are surrounded by so many electromagnetic sources. You know, the worst one is the alarm clock on your bed. So if you have that, or if you use your smartphone as an alarm clock, you know, you can do this, but you have to put it on airplane mode. Because if you don't do this, you are the whole night exposed to very, very, very aggressive and bad electromagnetic fields. You know, and I know everybody's always thinking, but what if somebody calls me at 2 o'clock in the night and I cannot get, well, then, you know, turn it off, because it will help you to improve the sleep. It will make you a more calm and more healthy person. And remember, you do that on a daily basis. You know, the things that bother us are the ones you do on a daily basis. You know, and not the ones you do one time per month or one time per year. Everything what you do on a daily basis, that counts for your health or your illnesses, in a good and in a bad way. You know, I always say a good heart attack has to be well earned. You have to do things wrong over a long period of time, consistently. And the heart attack is just the result which is happening by then. To close this, what does PEMF do with our bodies? Well, it's quite simple. This is a human cell. This is the smallest building block inside our organism. A lot of single cells together, they create tissue. A lot of tissue together in an intelligent form create an organ. A lot of organs together in intelligent form create an organ system. And this is what we see here in front of us. It's us as individuals. But everything starts in the smallest building block. That's our human cell. And the human cell has actually a two-way functionality. It works chemically, perfectly researched already, all the chemical processes within our human cells. So that means the whole intake, the whole fuel, what we gather during a day, everything, what we eat, what we drink, and what we breathe, ideally gets into our cells. And there are a lot of mechanisms inside our cells which are responsible for transforming this kind of fuel into energy, which we know as ATP, adenosine triphosphate. This adenosine triphosphate is the stuff what makes us thrive and survive, because it makes sure that our immune system gets enough energy. It makes sure that our cells stay intact, alive, and healthy in order to divide itself and to keep its entire biology alive and thrive. So if this goes out of balance, your cell diminishes, it eventually goes into apoptosis, and it dies, and it cannot be replaced anymore. This is unfortunately what we name as aging. Aging is very simple. You lose more cells than you are capable of dividing and reproducing. That's aging. That's why people, when they age, they become smaller. That's why people, when they age, they get all these nasty wrinkles. And that's why people, when they age, they lose their muscle tissue and all that kind of stuff. It's because we lose more cells than we are capable of replicating. And this is aging. And I don't know how you see it, but there is nothing good about aging. I cannot see, I'm looking for a positive aspect, but I cannot find one till today. You know, people always say, you have so much experience. Well, I would rather sell my experiences and get some years back, frankly speaking, you know. But there is nothing good about aging. So it is even more important, the older you become, the more you have to invest to keep that process, to postpone that process of cell death and division. Because you have only a certain amount of cycles, how many times you can do that. And once you reach the last cycle, in Italian they say finito la commedia. And then you cannot reproduce that cell anymore, so and then it's over. And then you start getting this and all that nasty stuff, which you see every morning when you look in the mirror. You know? And the man, you know, losing performance in sports and stuff like that. There is nothing good about aging. So we have to keep ourselves young as long as possible. Very important. So, and yeah. Wisdom, yeah. Exactly, I told you, I would rather pay it back and get some years back, you know what I mean? You know? Even wisdom does not convince me, Pam, sorry. Come up with something better next time, okay? What people don't know, beside all that chemical effects, there is also an energetic effect in each cell. And this is also very simple to explain to you, because we have these bubbles here, these round fellows, and they are called ions. Ions are little particles. When they move, they create a potential. And this potential creates electricity. And believe it or not, this is exactly what happens in each of your 70 trillion cells inside your body. You know, if your ions are attracted by an electromagnetic field, you know, ideally when this field is pulsing, and by the way, when you move over the Earth magnetic field, you know what you do? You change the static field of the Earth into a pulsating field. And whenever you move, what you do is, you kick the butts of these ions, and they start moving. And they start increasing the membrane potential of each cell. And this increasing membrane potential has a better capability of absorbing all the fuel. Everything what you eat, what you drink, and what you breathe. Which gives you a better utilization in the mitochondria, producing ATP. So, people who are moving, they have already a much better running metabolism. Meaning, they are capable of generating, producing more energy, more ATP. And people who are active are in general more healthy. Because there is no chemistry without energy. If you lie the whole day and you don't do anything, the ions become really sad because they cannot move anymore. If they don't move anymore, your membrane potential diminishes. If your membrane potential diminishes, your capability of absorbing all the fuel is reduced, which ends up in producing less ATP. And this is the problem. So, if you use a pulsed electromagnetic field device, you're gonna attract the ions, even if you don't move, and you increase membrane potential, and your metabolism in your entire 70 trillion cells will be improved straight away. And if you do this with an intelligent signal, remember the metronomes, which is capable of addressing these information to the cells and they start resonating with it, then you got the lottery win. Because each of your 70 trillion smallest intelligent building blocks start resonating with it and changing the entire biology of your entire organism. And that happens within minutes. And this is the reason why people, when they use PEMF over a longer period of time in a consistent way, they don't age as quick, they are not as often ill as people who don't do that, and also the people who are dealing with their chronic diseases in a much better way. Eventually even getting rid of them. Not every chronic condition can be reversed, but a lot of chronic conditions can be improved. Usually when it comes to pain, no problem to get rid of it, and we will probably hear that later on. So, this is what PEMF does. Nothing more and nothing less. PEMF doesn't care what problem you have. It doesn't care what indication you have. It doesn't care what disease you have. PEMF just tries to change the entire environment of your 70 trillion cells to increase the capability of helping the body itself and to improving the energy levels and to get the best out of what's still in. Does it make sense? Huh? And that's what the system does. I always say it's like charging a battery or inflating a balloon. You know, suddenly you have access to your full capability. And this is why what it makes it so, you know, sometimes even miraculous. But there is a explanation to it. And it even works when you don't believe in it.